Have you ever wondered how some sites achieve these types of scroll-based text animations? Well, today I'm going to show you exactly how to achieve this effect and even create your own with the use of Lenis Smooth Scroll and the Greensock animation platform. So let's get started. If you enjoyed this video, check out DesignCourse.com where you can learn UI, UX, CSS, and more with my custom interactive platform that makes learning fun and easy. All right, so here is our HTML. We're just linking a CSS main.css file, which is right up here. I'm using Sass for this. So when I click this, I'm watching it with the live Sass compiler, which you can install in the extension sections over here. We also have some initial HTML, very simple. We just have a section with the H1 in the middle. We also have a section here with a paragraph of reveal type. So this means for every element that has the class of reveal type, we'll be able to do these cool, interesting text effects once we hook it all up with JavaScript. And so that's what the next three sections are. And we're going to change these sections background colors and stuff just to experiment, see what the effect looks like on different backgrounds and different type. And then there's just an empty section at the bottom just so we can scroll past, so we can kind of see how the animations work based on scroll position all the way up and all the way down. So switching over to the CSS, nothing exciting happening in the body element. The next one is going to be the section element. And so that right there is pretty simple. Each section is going to have a height of 100 viewport height. We have padding right here with a responsive width sort of padding on the left and right. We have a display grid, place content center. That's going to get each one of those paragraphs right in the center vertically and horizontally. After that, then we have each paragraph inside. So we're just going to do some responsive type with clamp right there. And then finally, we want to make some small adjustments to each one of these sections, or almost all of them rather. First one's going to be nth of type 1. That's just going to select the very first one. We're putting a border at the bottom. Then we have the third one. We're going to change the background to yellow. Just to make it different looking. And then nth of type 4, which is the last one, or almost the last one, is going to be background. We're making it like a dark background with a white color. All right, so after saving that and right-clicking open with live server, which you need the live server extension, your design will look like this. So I scroll down, and there we go. Nothing too exciting happening. And what we're going to do now is work on the JavaScript. So we have a few different things we're going to import via CDNs. So the first one is going to be Greensock animation platform itself. All right. And by the way, you can grab that by typing GSAP 3 CDN in Google, and then the first result that comes up, it gives you all the Greensock basically libraries that you can use. We're also using scroll trigger right here. And that's important for scroll-based animations, which we will be using. And then we also have something called split type. All right, so split type is a JavaScript library that allows you to easily split type into words, into characters if you want. So we're going to do that. And then finally, we're going to use Lenis once again just for some quick smooth scroll. All right, so let's type in script. And let's just get Lenis up and running right here. We're going to paste in the following code. This comes directly from their documentation. So let's get this tabbed up. This right here, that whole snippet, comes from the Lenis Smooth Scroll GitHub documentation. And so now you can see when we scroll down, it's nice and smooth, easy peasy. Now we're going to go ahead and switch gears and focus on the main reason you are here. So the first thing we want to do is go ahead and register the scroll trigger plugin, which is a requirement. And again, that is included right here on this line. After that, we want to go ahead and then use split type. All right, and it's very super simple. So all we have to do is, let me zoom up here for you. Const, we're going to call this split types equals document.query selector all, because we're selecting a class, therefore we want to select all of them. And then we're going to go to and just use that code suggestion, which is GitHub Copilot. All right, so reveal type is the class that we want to target essentially. once we have that, we simply type in split types and then just wait for GitHub Copilot to tell us what we're going to be writing in next. All right, and that's actually not exactly correct. We're just going to type in char I, wrap this in another parentheses. All right, there we go. All right, so after that, what we're going to do is then type in const text equals new split type. Sorry, this is where we're using split type. We pass in char, which is defined here in first parameter. And then in the next parameter, we're going to go ahead and open up an object and simply specify types. We can just request only for the element to be constructed in such a way where the DOM is manipulated so that each individual character has basically its own div element essentially. And so I'll show you what that looks like. So we're just going to do chars, and we can also return words if we want as well. Again, if that's confusing, I'll show you exactly what's happening here. So let's just console log text. All right, hit F12. Okay, so as you can see, there's a bunch of stuff that's happening here. The best way to show you about what's happening is I'm going to open up this area, and don't worry, I will zoom up here in a second. Notice how it says div class word. That's because we passed in word there. And then in each word, we have a character. All right, so this one is systematically, there's a bunch of them. So each one has a div element, and then we can go ahead and animate each of those with a Greensock animation platform, which we will do now. All right. So honestly, we don't even need words because we don't use it. We're just animating at the character level. But just know that you can use words if you want. All right. So the next part is basically all that's left, and just making minor tweaks to the settings. So this is going to be gsap from. We're going to say text.chars. All right. And then inside of here, we're going to go ahead and define a scroll trigger. All right, so the trigger is going to be char itself. Start is going to be top, and then we'll do 80%. And then we're going to do end. We'll do top. We'll do 20%. Now, if this is at all confusing to you, I've done some recent videos about Greensock animation platform, scroll trigger, and these properties specifically. So definitely check that out. We're going to turn on scrub true, which means the animations, and I'll show you this, they're tied to the scroll position and not time. If that sounds confusing, don't worry, you'll see what I mean. We're going to do markers. For now, we're just going to say false, but I'll turn those on in a second just to show you what that does essentially. And then we're going to do opacity 0.2 and a stagger of 0.1. So opacity, this is the first effect that we're doing. So notice we're using the from method. So it's going to go from the opacity of 0.2. So it's going to be gray initially if it's black text we're working with. And then stagger, what this means is instead of all the characters coming in at the same time, they're going to come in at a 0.1 second or a 1/10 of a second delay between each other. All right, so let's go ahead and save that, and we're going to see if this actually worked. All right, let's close this stuff out. Oh yeah, it works. Let's go back to the top, scroll down. Look at that. Very, very nice. And notice it's tied to the scroll position, not time itself. All right, so when I move this up and down, that's when they animate in. And it depends on the look that you want to go for, because we're going to also show you how to work with this in such a way that it's not tied to time. It'll be tied to, not tied to scroll position rather, it'll be tied to time. So look at this. They're all just animating right now. When I changed scrub to false, we're going to look at this more specifically in a bit, but I just want to show you what the difference is. So the scroll trigger, it starts, and once it enters the viewport, that's it. It'll start animating like that, but it's not tied to the scroll position. So you'll see how this is useful. It's kind of weird right now going forward, but for now we're going to leave that scrub true. And this time I'm going to go ahead, we're going to change this up. So that was a cool one where it kind of just shows like an opacity of 20% of the text, and then it'll bring it all the way in, to 100% opacity based on scroll. But we can also just change these values for other stuff as well. So for instance, we could do Y. We can make it the move from a position of 100 pixels up and down, and maybe we'll do opacity 0 as well. So you can chain multiple animation properties. So watch this. Let's go back. So you use your mouse scroll wheel. It's especially pretty cool. All right, very awesome. So obviously with very little work, we're able to completely change the motif of this. What else is there? Let's do another one. For instance, we'll do, we'll scale it. We'll scale each type. So we'll do scale Y. So it'll be on the vertical axis, and we'll say it'll come from 0. Then we'll do like a Y of -20. And then we'll do a transform origin of top. All right. We'll take opacity off. We'll leave stagger there. Now look at this. Very, very cool. Now, the one that I really like, the final example I'm going to show you, is tied to time and not scroll position, but it does use scroll position, but only to make it start. So that means basically we're going to take scrub and change that to false. All right, so when we do that, we're going to go ahead and change these animation values and the timing values specifically. So for our stagger, we have stagger set to 0.1. We're going to specify also a duration of 1. Let's go ahead and let's also adjust this so that we can customize the color in each section. So, and then we'll also experiment with the time-based animation with scrub false. So let's say, for instance, we want to change the colors for each of those 4 sections, and we want those to animate in kind of like in the original, where you have 2 colors. You have like the opacity gray, like at 20%, and then all of a sudden it's going into a different color based on scroll. Well, the way we could do this is with custom data attributes. So the first step for that is specifying those data attributes in the HTML itself. So to do that, we're going to say the first one's going to be data hyphen, and it always has to start with data hyphen. Then you can go ahead and put the actual name, BG color. So that's like going to be the original color when you're not scrolled down. So in this case, like in the first example, it's kind of like our first where it was 20% gray. So for this, let me look at my reference monitor for the color. Okay, so BG color, we'll say equals, and this is just going to be a hex value code, CCCCCC, so 6 C's there. It's kind of like gray. And then we're going to do an accent color, or foreground color. So data hyphen FG color equals, this time we'll say teal. All right. And then we want to do the same thing with the other one. So I'm just going to paste in from my reference monitor. Here's a value for here, where the background, I think that's a yellow color. Yeah, it is. And then we're changing the color to black. And then finally, the third one, we're changing it to this color code, 353535, and then making the data foreground color red. So that's the first step. And then what we need to do is use JavaScript to gain access to each one of those. So what we do is, to get those, we're going to say const background is char.dataset.bg color. Notice it's camel case. So what it's looking at is, we called it, what did we call it? Yeah, data-bg color. And so it removes data, then it looks at the first element, bg, and then if there's a dash, it will get rid of the dash and then capitalize the next letter. That's how it's getting that name. I just wanted to describe that. And then const foreground, or FG, is going to be foreground color, which is our second data. So now we have access to each one of those classes, essentially. So then what we want to do, I'm going to use a fromTo method. So when it comes to GSAP, we can use 3 different methods to animate. So one's going to be from, which we just use. You're going to go from these values specified here to something else. You can use the opposite, which is to. All right, so it's going to go from whatever the values they are, you have set by default in CSS, to whatever's defined here. You can also do fromTo, and so you can explicitly define what it looks like before and what you want it to look like after, based on the scroll trigger and all that stuff, like whenever that's supposed to change to these elements. All right, so we're gonna, I basically gutted everything here on the fromTo, and so I'm gonna start from scratch here to describe what's happening. So we're going from and to, so we're gonna have 2 different objects. First, the from properties, those are the physical properties like in CSS, and then to, another set of properties. So we open this up in an object, and we're going to say color is BG, which is tied to our data set color. All right, so these are going to be unique based on the values we specify for each of our paragraphs. So it's going to go from that original color of the background color that we specified, and then we also have, we're just going to leave it like that, actually. Then, so this is a super simple example. We open up in this second object, and this is going to be color foreground. So Copilot was smart enough to see that. And then we're also going to have a scroll trigger defined on this element. So we'll go ahead and specify scroll trigger. And this is actually almost correct based on what we're using. We're going to change bottom to top right here in the end property. We're going to change scrub to false. And then markers will be false as well for now. You can always turn that on to true to see what that does. It basically just helps you out and figure out where your scroll triggers and stuff are. And then at that point, we're going to have also a, let's see, a duration of 0.3, and then a stagger of 0.02. All right, now remember, we're using scrub false, so it is it's tied to our timing. All right, and you want to play with these values to get the timing that you want. So I found that it worked. Oop, uh-oh. I think we have an error, so let's check this out. Oh yes, there we go. I had my, these were not set up correctly, screwing things up. There we go. Okay, so let's go ahead and save that. We'll go back and check this out. There we go. So now it's not tied to the animations itself. It's not tied to scroll position. Instead, it is tied to time, but it's activated by the scroll position. Now, when these come in, they don't actually animate back out. And that's because we need to specify a toggle actions. So toggle actions, which I did a whole video on from my last video or a couple videos back, basically allows you to define what happens to the animation based on the scroll position and in relation to the trigger itself, in relation to the viewport and where it's at, and if it's coming or if it's going. So there's 4 different values. And the value that I believe I thought works best for this particular scenario is going to be when it comes in, we want it to play. I think it's on enter back is the next one. We're going to put play, and then reverse, and then reverse. You can do complete as well. There's a few other ones that you can do. You can do pause. I would check out the Greensock docs here, but let's go ahead and go up, There you go. And so now the animation's reversing itself. Now let's go ahead just for one final thing and experiment with the other values that we created before, like when they scale in. So for instance, we can still change it to this right here. Like we can take this, and then we could take, let's see, actually no. We'll leave it there, and then yeah. Let's change that to that value right there. And then we'll change this one to scale y1 and y0. So if we save it, still has the same effect, but it's not tied, like I said, to scroll position. Awesome, awesome stuff.